If you don't know by now, Outcome Memories is set to have 19 executioners inside of the game. Now, you might be wondering about which one is the coolest and which one should you play? In this video, we're going to be ranking all the executioners based off their design and how they play. But before I begin, I want to make sure to tell y'all to like and subscribe for more content, and let's get off with number 19. For my personal opinion, I generally think Suture should be in 19th place. Now, for the Suture fans out here, hear me out, okay? It ain't even Sonic! He is one of the weirdest characters I've ever seen, and he does look pretty cool, but honestly, I just really dislike his design. But some credit I do have to give to is the voice actor does do a really good job with the role. But as of right now, we don't know exactly when Suture released, but we do know he is an original character for Outcome Memories. I'm also going to find it interesting on how big he's going to be, because inside of his models and renders, he looks pretty big. But with that being said, we're on to number 18. Following the trend of Suture, we have Alucard. Now, what I mean by following the trend is he's another character that doesn't really follow the Sonic style. If you don't know, Alucard is a name for Dracula's son, and it's basically Dracula backwards. In his lore, he's supposed to be kind of like the watcher of all the rounds, and basically the looper. Kind of like the second-hand man to an Outcome King. He's also said to become from a soul dimension, and have lore of Blaze, Suture, and the shopkeeper. Now, I do have to give him credit, and his skull mask is pretty cool, but for the same reason as Suture, I just dislike that it doesn't really look like Sonic inside of the Sonic game. But I like how mysterious he looks, and he's probably going to be a cool character when he releases. But with that, we're going to go on to number 17. Coming in 17th place is a character that we actually have a lot of lore for, but I find pretty interesting. This character is known as Korin, or 500Y. Korin is basically a 500-year-old version of Sonic.exe. But in this version, he takes significantly different things, and he's also a really tall character. He was also released by Dr. Robotnik inside of his storyline, and then later on killed him. Now, I find his model actually pretty cool with a giant sword, and being as big as he is, but honestly, for my opinion, I just dislike the design. I find it interesting that for being named X, he has a Y symbol on his chest. For you Korin X lovers out there, I could totally understand the appeal of the knight, but for me personally, I just don't like the idea. He also seems like an EXE that'll have very long range. I mean, just saying, but his sword is somehow longer than him. Him and like the previous two are probably not going to be released for a while, so while they're still getting different lore for the Outcome Memory, it's still unknown for sure how they're going to work or how they're going to be played. But that's it for this chivalrous knight, and we're on to number 16. Coming in 16th place is actually one of the cooler characters inside of Outcome Memories. That character being Looney. Looney's whole design is that he's basically the original version of Sonic, where Sonic was meant to be a villain and Eggman was the hero. And as you see, he takes on a form of rabbit since that's what Sonic's original design was, a rabbit. I really like the concept of the old character coming to Outcome Memories, so that technically is lore accurate. And he's basically 2011X, but instead of taking on a thing of trying to be like Sonic, he's technically a different alternate version of him. This means he still has all the demonic powers and stuff. Now, the reason why I'm putting him in 16th place is you're going to see next time, I really just dislike 2011X. And since he's kind of like a copy clone of him, he is pretty cool, but honestly, I think he should just be below him. We also really have nothing for him as of now for Outcome Memory lore or how he plays. But once again, I really like how it takes on the original version of Sonic, but with that, we're on to number 15. Coming in 15th place is a shocker to many of you probably, it is 2011X. Now, before you all go hating me for hating the OG, technically Mystic Crimson is the OG character, and this is a retake on him. I honestly like the original storyline, and the 2011X's original story and lore is pretty good, but I generally like Mystic Crimson more, and I just feel like he doesn't have as much depth as the other EXEs. I know he has the vessels and souls and stuff, yada yada, but his design is just a little weird to me. I also find it funny that when you activate Rage Mode inside of Outcome Memories, he grows somehow 6 rows of teeth and they become a lot longer. His moveset inside of the game is very interesting, but for most of the time when you're playing 2011X, the game is extremely survivor-sided. But don't worry, this is the only one that's going to be lowest from 2011X. Characters like Lord X and EXE, I prefer a lot more, and I'll explain why later. But honestly, I think this faker deserves 15th place. Now coming up next is actually a faker of a faker. Imperfect. Imperfect, instead of trying to copy Sonic, is actually trying to copy 2011X. I find this idea really cool because instead of being a more like offset Sonic, it's a way more offset EXE. This means the design is a lot more lengthy and distorted, and it looks really cool to me. I also like how the design is black and gray from normal brown and blue with the rest of the EXEs. I just find it really offsetting to see a character who's trying to mimic a bloodthirsty character who's trying to mimic a hero. But unfortunately, as of now, we don't really have any moves for him or technically lore about him since he is an original character for Outcome Memories. But one thing we do know is Imperfect is imperfect. I think we can all tell that by the design and how he looks. But in that regard, I generally like him just more than 2011X since I find his idea cooler than 2011X. I could just feel 2011X fuming right now that his faker did better than him on this tier list. But now we're on to a character that isn't just a fake. Coming in 13th place, we have No More Innocence. No, I can tell you, design-wise, this guy is crazy. He is technically a ghost, and with that, he likes to haunt children. Figures. I also find his mechanics really cool for a fact that you're only able to see out of a TV screen, and he seems like a really lengthy character, being around 2 times bigger than Sonic.exe. I also find it interesting that he's somehow missing a leg and hopping around like that, which is, you know, pretty crazy if he's that fast with one leg. I also find his face very disturbing and offsetting because you don't see any pupils and his teeth are very large. It's like he's staring into your soul. But other than that, that's honestly how I feel about No More Innocence. He is not a bad character in any means, but honestly, I just like the designs of the other EXEs a lot more because they look pretty cool and have pretty interesting stories. But now that we have No More Innocence, time for another acronym in 12th place. Coming in 12th place might actually shock you, but I think it's EYX. EYX is this weird, buggy, parasite, virus thing. He basically looks like if Slenderman and Sonic had a child. He is also confirmed to be the tallest EXE inside of the game, along with normal EXE, and that's just his base form. The fact that many maps have doors is shocking to me, because there's no way this guy can fit inside of those. You know he's big, lengthy, and scary when Eggman looks puny to him. He also has a very interesting design of the eyes, where they're both technically connected in the middle, so he can technically become a Cyclops. He also has a really amazing laugh, making him sound like Santa Claus, so they gotta add a skin for him, I say. Also, EYX takes his original lore inside of Outcome Memories, being just a computer virus and not a parasite, bug-filled, infested thingamabob. Also, if you see the design inside of the first part of this part, then you do tell that he did have a redesign, and I think he's kind of smaller now. Generally think this is a good thing because if he's like 10'10", there's no way anyone's escaping, bro. How is Knuckles meant to stun that guy? And what would a spin dash even do to bro? You can't even reach him. But with that being said, we're going on to the creator of them all. Now, if you know Sonic.exe lore, well, we have the Allfather coming out next. The Allfather, instead of only being a super saturated Sonic, is technically the original creator of all EXEs. This has now changed where just as more people know of him, the bigger and stronger he gets. So if this video was about lore strength, which might come out soon, not sure, he would 100% be number 1. Just speaking of his name right now makes him powerful. And is also known inside of his lore that if any EXE known of him, and every EXE does, he's technically just naturally stronger. I also find his design really off-putting because of how big his smile is, and the fact that he could just change his form whenever he wants. There's technically no reason to use the cane, just except for the scare factor. He's also able to collate clones of himself, and if you played Sonic Stage Robloxia, you know they get pretty messed up. I'm also going to find it interesting on how they're going to make him play inside of the game, since, you know, just one-shotting every survivor isn't really that fun. But shockingly, this is actually one of the only EXEs that follow Sonic pretty well. Bro knows exactly what he's doing. He's going to target Tails 100% first. Now we're on to the next killer, which is technically the only killer that isn't really Sonic. Now, the next executioner is Tails Doll. As of right now, we don't have a model for him inside of the game, but you know, Tails Doll does worth to be mentioned. Unlike the rest of the executioners trying to copy Sonic, EXE, or doing their own thing like Suture, this guy is technically just Tails Doll. Basically inside of a lore for doing TD lore, since we don't really have Outcome Memory as of this time. Basically, instead of taking over Sonic's body, he took over Tails Doll's body. I also find him very disturbing that the fact that he can fly, he has giant Edward Scissorhand claws, and the fact that he just has like a stitched smile. What I find even better is the fact that he's technically a doll, so he has no emotions. Also, as of now, it is known that he will not have the same kit inside of TD. I mean, other than flying, of course, because how a doll flies, don't ask me. But if you ever see this thing in real life staring at you, you know you are a goner. But I gotta say, good job, Tails Doll, you've made it to 10th place. Now, coming up next is a character that despises 2011X even more than me. This character is EXE, or known as the FNF mod, Faker. This guy was technically created by 2011X to be kind of like a copy of him, and he's technically his father. But then he was banished since 2011X didn't really like his style. I gotta say, having father issues as a demon who kills Sonic characters is pretty bad. He also has his faker form, which I'll put up right now, which is really crazy. I find it very interesting how he tries to look like Sonic, but messes up pretty poorly, and his form is super big. Like I said earlier, this form is as big as EYX, but it only works like a transformation. Meaning that during most matches, he won't be inside of his huge form, but he'll probably be inside of his normal form. But something I really do like about him is how off-putting his face is. It just stares at you. There's really no emotions at all, because that's how his character is. He wasn't created to love the Sonic character. He was created to basically destroy humanity. And now, something I gotta say that we're all thinking is inside of his faker form, his huge form, who is stunning, bro? Let's be real now. I don't think a punch is gonna block that. Also, what is a spin dash meant to do against that? There is no way you're getting past that. For the Goliath that he is, I think he deserves 9th place. And we're on to 8th. Now, I'm sure 90% of you are not going to agree with me, but coming in 8th place is Furnace and Starved. Furnace, by all means, is a really cool designed character. He is literally a transformer, and he works with it super well. I also find his walking animation and his voice lines to be pretty good. He's also intended to work kind of like Metal Sonic, having a destructive charge, and also just being really fast. As of now, we have no renders of Starved, but for some reason we have like 25 renders of Furnace. I think you could tell the devs really love Furnace. But the reason why we're putting him in 8th place is honestly, his story and design are pretty cool, but the other ones are just way better in my opinion. Not saying he's bad, but honestly, from 11th place to 1st place, you could generally swap them around and they would be acceptable. But coming next is the newest addition to the EXE class. Originally being deconfirmed, we have Fleetway Sonic. Now for quick lore, Fleetway Sonic is basically normal Sonic, but when he did his super transformation inside the Fleetway comics, he actually kind of becomes evil since he can't control the power. Not only is he the only character inside of this game to actually be super, but he's one of the only characters that isn't an EXE. What I mean by this is technically he's just Sonic. And what makes his design even cooler is that he can technically die. If you stun him enough times and deal enough damage to him, he does actually lose. Of course his abilities are pretty freaking strong, and he's able to fly, but that is still a pretty cool gimmick nonetheless. He also has his laser beam attack and lifesteal ability, which is pretty cool. Honestly, for him technically just being Sonic, he is a really cool character, and honestly, I think he deserves 7th place. Now, in 6th place, we have Kolossos. Kolossos is technically the only original Roblox EXE. He originates from TD, or the Disaster, whatever you like to call it. Basically in his lore, he's literally just Sonic.exe, but mutated. Now, what I find cool about him, and I love about his design, is his arm is just a sword. Low-key, if Kolossos was ever in a fencing match, I would put all my money on bro. He also has one of the loudest laughs to ever come out of any EXE, and he also doesn't speak. And what I love even more is that his eyes don't match up with his actual eye holes. If you're wondering what I mean, his eye sockets are really big, and yet he just has tiny dots. Like, if you ever see him, you know you are cooked. I also find him very interesting that he's literally able to skewer survivors like a kebab, and just start ground pounding them. And of course, he does 55 damage, because why not? You know what, in fact, make it a cool 95. All jokes aside, I'm pretty sure in some of his designs, he's actually supposed to have devil horns, but I haven't seen if that's supposed to be official or not. You know, if they ever do add milestones, I would assume that, since technically he is a demon. I also like on his other hand, not like an Outcome Memories, which will be a skin, he also has a giant devilish claw. Believe me when I say, getting hit by something like that will do 55 damage to you. For being a Roblox original character, he is surprisingly high on this list because I personally love his design. Coming in 5th place, we have Mystic Crimson, or as I'm going to be calling him, Sonic.exe. Sonic.exe is the original version of him. This means he doesn't have any stories like able to become like giant things in the future. He's just bro. Also, just saying, be pretty cool if we could get his design anytime soon, you know? Not being too picky, but I wonder how close he's going to look to 2011X. The reason why I say this is they kind of are the same character, but not. And I'm assuming for his abilities, he probably have the spin dash ability, kind of like Sonic and TD, or maybe he's able to climb passive ladders, kind of like the original game. The reason why he's coming in 5th is because he's an OG. His design is honestly really good, and I personally love his laugh. It's one of the only EXE laughs that is actually scary. But with all of that, we're coming on to my actual second favorite EXE in 4th place. This EXE, or no longer EXE, is Genesis X. Now, for starters, bro looks like an analog horror character. When you look at this, you cannot tell me bro isn't about to do some devious stuff. He is also very distorted in his bodily figure, and I honestly find it really cool that he's a complete stealth character. Believe me, when you see that thing chasing you down, you will know you're pretty screwed. He also has a really interesting gimmick where he can only see in red and black, kind of like the Genesis. The reason why this happens is because he was technically working on the Virtual Boy, which only comes in red and black, and he was so overworked on it, he died taking over one of the sprites, being Genesis-X. He is technically one of only 2 innocent executioners, since he doesn't actually control Genesis-X. Genesis-X is just rage, and believe me, looking at his character, he is filled with rage. Also, not gonna die, if you saw a bad guy peeking out of your window at night, you are never sleeping again. In my general opinion, Genesis-X is the scariest EXE when it comes to just looks, but in my opinion, not the best designed. But for the best design, we're coming on to 3rd place. But wait, before 3rd place, we're actually gonna have an honorable mention, Sonic.omt. Now, OMT was scrapped because of problems with the original creator, but in my opinion, Sonic.omt would be first 100%. Only reason why he's an honorable mention is because this is technically the game ranking, and he's not in the game. Basically, his whole spiel is, what if we made 2011X crazier, more evil, and more sadistic? It's basically getting Joker's craziness and saying double it and give it to the next EXE. His designs are also very interesting, able to shape into these giant monsters and looks like Sonic but just way off. He is definition of a true madman, and it's pretty sad that he isn't inside of the game anymore. But with the honorable mention out of the way, we're on to 3rd place, which is Rewrite. Now, as of now, we don't have a Rewrite skin for inside of the game, but I'm assuming it'll probably look like his original design, so I'll put that up. Rewrite story is very cool, his design is amazing in my opinion, and I'll tell you about it. In the lore, basically he's technically God because a priest wanted to create an AI version of God so people could talk to, so he could sell it for money, and Rewrite is what the outcome was. So it's not like the other ones who are saying I am God because they want to troll you. No, bro theoretically literally is. Also, if you've been playing Outcome Memory recently, if you see a malware skin for Amy, that technically comes from the same universe. Basically, all the characters look way different than normal and pretty much a lot cooler. They also made Eggman like 20 feet tall. For what reason? I don't know. But back onto a Rewrite, I also find it interesting how he's technically able to like dismember his limbs. No part of his body is technically connected to another part, so if he wanted to, he could just send his hands after you. He also has the rings on his arms and legs, that being just the souls he's collected. He also has the ability to perfectly impersonate any EXE as shown inside of a mod, being 2011X, Lord-X, and Majin. But with that being said, we're on to 2nd place. Now, for 2nd place, there is technically 2 EXEs here, because I could not make up my mind. These ones being 2017X and Lord-X. Lord-X being one of the most devious characters over like infinite years old, and just scary in general, and 2017X being literally thinking he's Sonic and having a really cool design. Both of them have their own pros and inside of their stories act very differently from each other, but both are so cool. I find very interesting for 2017X that he isn't technically made out of flesh or like the others. He's technically more like a porcelain painting or like a ceramic jar. That's why if you've seen his broken face form, that's literally a broken face. And then Lord-X being technically the future version of 2011X. With this, technically his vessel or his body has been decaying, and that's what he's become. If you've also seen any of the attacks, you can tell for Lord-X, he's technically timed like 2011X with his moveset, but his attacks take significantly longer to use. And technically, these two are the same character, since EXE, 2011X, 2017X, Mystic Crimson, and Lord-X are all technically derived from the same character, but just different ideas. Now, something that is confusing is how Lord-X and 2011X are saying at the same time, but we're just going to ignore that and say, cool design, spiky quills are good. I honestly love how soulless and evil Lord-X looks. I also like how 2017X thinks he's literally Sonic, and he literally poses like him. But for someone who's soulless, that comes in 1st place. In 1st place is my most favorite EXE, and in my opinion, best well designed. This character is none less than End. End in his lore is basically literally just Sonic, but he got taken over by this thing because he killed the original one. He's technically the only other executioner that's technically innocent, since he sees all the survivors in a way to kill him. So instead he's returning the favor. He also has a return by death gimmick, where he does have an HP bar, but unlike Fleetway, if it drains, whoever did the last bit of damage, they instantly take over a body. Doesn't matter if they are last life or how much HP they have, they just are instantly out of the game. His face has no emotions because there's no face, and a lot of them he seems pretty lost, and or inside of one for a thumbnail of this video, bro was crawling for help. He also is going to be using a shovel for a weapon, which is really cool because inside of your original lore, that's technically what it was. So you know, other than just hitting people with instead of hitting people like a frying pan with a shovel, he could just possess their bodies. I can't wait to see what skins they do for him, but honestly, he is such a cool character. But with that being said, that is all the EXEs ranked inside of Outcome Memories. Yeah, I know, the cast is huge with 20 characters, but your opinions might be different from mine, but tell me down below, who is your favorite EXE, or in your opinion, best designed EXE? But I want to make sure to say like and subscribe again. I want to thank you all for reaching the end of the video. Hope you all liked and enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.